The Plaza Hotel on Fifth Avenue does not do anything quietly. Not the gold leaf ceiling. Not the 300 guests in winter formal wear. Not the way a name sounds when spoken from a microphone into that specific kind of silence. Grant Caldwell stood near the center of the ballroom with a glass of Bordeaux and the easy posture of a man who had already decided tonight belonged to him. Charcoal Brioni suit, Rolex Submariner, everything calibrated. Petra Voss stood 2 steps to his left, close enough to be noticed, far enough to deny. "They're going to call your name," she said quietly. "Everyone in this room knows it." Grant didn't smile. He just took a slow sip and nodded once, like a man receiving information he already had. On stage, Elliot Vance, chairman of Pinnacle Group, adjusted the microphone. The room went still. 4 years ago, this company was in serious trouble. Most of you don't know how serious, because the person who fixed it asked for nothing in return. No press, no credit, no corner office. He paused. She just did the work. The word landed differently than Grant expected. She. "It is my honor to name the new chief executive officer of Pinnacle Group." A pause, the kind that stretches 1 second into something permanent. "Serena Caldwell." Applause rolled from the front tables backward like a wave that had been building for years. Grant did not move. A woman in midnight blue stepped forward, dark hair pulled back, face completely calm, not the calm of someone surprised. The calm of someone who had been waiting a very long time and had finally arrived. She found Grant across the room, held his gaze. 3 seconds, then looked away. "Thank you. It's good to finally be here." Petra glanced at Grant. His wine glass had slipped from his fingers, shattered quietly on the marble floor. Nobody looked at the broken glass. Everyone was looking at the stage, at the woman he had hidden, who had just walked back in. Serena didn't tell this story from the beginning. She told it from a Monday morning, 6 weeks after the gala, sitting in her new corner office on the 38th floor of the Pinnacle Group building on Park Avenue. Coffee on the desk, Manhattan spread out below her like something she had earned, which she had. She was reading a contract when the thought arrived, quietly and without warning. Had I ever actually been blind, or did I just choose not to look? She set the contract down. 6 years earlier, Serena Reeves had been the kind of woman other professionals paid attention to. Not because she was loud, because when she finally spoke in a room full of smart people, she was usually right. She'd built her career at Pinnacle from analyst to senior strategist in 5 years. Her MacBook Pro had more late nights logged in it than most people put into a decade. Grant Caldwell had walked into one of her presentations and looked at her the way certain men look at things they immediately decide they want. He was sharp. She would always give him that. And he had a specific kind of charm, the kind that feels like being chosen. He listened carefully. He remembered details. He made her feel, for the first time in years, genuinely seen. They were married 18 months after they met. Year 1 was fine. Year 2, she started noticing small things. He went to client dinners alone. He introduced her at social events as my wife, Serena. Full stop. No context, as if her identity began and ended with that sentence. When she mentioned it, he said she was overthinking. She believed him. That was the part she sat with now. Not his lies. Her believing. He had adjusted his cravat 3 times in the mirror before every event she wasn't invited to. She had thought that meant he was careful. She understood now it meant he was dressing for someone else's eyes. In the drawer of her nightstand, in that same Upper East Side apartment she no longer lived in, was a leather notebook she had been filling for 4 years. Grant had never once asked what was inside it. Petra Voss had a system for everything. Color-coded calendar, responded to emails within 4 minutes, never walked into a meeting without having already read every document on the table. She had built her career on being the most prepared person in any room, and for 2 years, that room had usually included Grant Caldwell. She had joined his firm with a Georgetown MBA and the kind of ambition that walks in the door before you do. Grant had noticed her in her 3rd week when she contradicted a senior partner in front of a client, and turned out to be correct. He had caught up with her after the meeting. "That took nerve," he said. "That took math," she said. He smiled. She thought that smile meant he respected her. She was not entirely wrong. But there is a difference between respect and usefulness, and it would take her 2 years to learn which one she had actually earned. Grant began bringing her to events, galas, board dinners, a charity auction at the Metropolitan Museum, a weekend in the Hamptons where she wore a white linen dress and told herself this was what building a future looked like. He had mentioned a wife exactly once. Early on, casually, the way you mention a subscription you keep forgetting to cancel. When Petra pressed, he said the marriage was over in every way that mattered, that he was handling it, that she should trust him. She trusted him. What she did not know was that 40 blocks away, in a quiet Upper East Side apartment, a woman named Serena was cooking dinner and filling a leather notebook, and choosing, very deliberately, not to sign anything. Then one evening, Petra was pulling background files for a client pitch. Routine work. She opened a folder she had never seen, dated 4 years ago, labeled with Grant's initials. She read the first page, then the second, then stopped. The writing was not his. She knew his voice well enough by now to know that. She took a screenshot on her phone. She told herself it was nothing. But she did not delete it. Grant had planned the evening carefully. Not carefully enough, as it turned out. But he didn't know that yet. He had asked his assistant to book a romantic dinner reservation. Something intimate. Candlelight. Good wine. The kind of setting where a person feels warm and trusting and unlikely to read 30 pages of legal language with a critical eye. His assistant booked a vegan restaurant on the Upper West Side. Grant had wanted a steakhouse. He sat across from Serena, staring at a menu that contained the words butternut squash tartare and cashew brie, and quietly accepted that the universe was working against him. He ordered a Bordeaux and a beet salad, and kept his expression pleasant. Serena ordered soup and watched him perform relaxed. She had known something was coming. Grant always got attentive right before he needed something. After dinner, back at the apartment, he set a folder on the kitchen island, poured 2 glasses of wine without asking. "Just a financial restructuring," he said. "Tax purposes. My attorney reviewed it. Completely standard." He slid it toward her, set a pen beside it. She opened to the summary tab he had helpfully marked. Dense legal language. 30 pages. The summary described it vaguely as a realignment of shared financial instruments. She picked up the pen. The S was already forming when her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced down. A text. From an unsaved number. A group thread she had never seen. Group name, legal exit plan. Members, Grant, a family law attorney, Petra Voss. The message read, "She's about to sign. Stand by." Serena read it once, read it again. She set the pen down, looked up at Grant with an expression she had spent 6 years learning to keep perfectly neutral. "Actually, do you want coffee?" she asked. "Sure," he said. She walked to the kitchen, filled the kettle, set out 2 mugs like everything was fine, and with her back to him, hands completely steady, she took out her phone. She photographed the cover page, the signature page, the asset schedules buried on pages 19 through 22, every single page, all 30 of them. Grant knew something had shifted. Serena hadn't signed. She hadn't argued either. She had made coffee, handed him a mug, and talked about nothing. A neighborhood restaurant that had closed, a book she was reading, and the whole conversation had the quality of a door being held open just long enough for you to walk through before it quietly shut behind you. He called Petra the next morning. "She didn't sign," he said. Petra was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. "Does she know?" "I don't know what she knows." "Then we move faster." This was the version of Petra that Grant had always found useful, decisive, unsentimental, forward-moving. She had drawn up a plan within the hour. Grant would approach Elliot Vance directly and position himself for the pinnacle CEO seat before Serena could make any move of her own. They had a window. They needed to use it. What neither of them knew was that the window had already closed. But they were committed now, and committed people rarely stop to check whether the door is still open. Petra went further on her own. She had a contact, a financial gossip columnist who operated in the space between journalism and rumor. She drafted an anonymous tip from a coffee shop on Lexington Avenue on her personal laptop, using language carefully calibrated to sound like genuine concern. The tip described Grant's wife as someone who had withdrawn from professional life due to personal instability, that she had never really understood the corporate world, that Grant had essentially been managing the household situation quietly for years. She sent it without telling Grant. She told herself it was damage control. 2 days later, Grant sent Elliot Vance a formal email requesting a private meeting to discuss the CEO transition. Professional, confident. The email of a man who had already decided the outcome. Elliot read it at his desk on the 42nd floor. He read it twice. Then he forwarded it, without comment, directly to Serena, with a single line written by hand at the top. "Thought you should see this first." The day Serena left, Grant was at a client lunch in Midtown. She had planned it that way. She took one suitcase, her mother's photograph, the leather notebook, the old MacBook Air from the back of the bedroom closet, the one Grant had never paid attention to because it was not the expensive one. She left everything else exactly where it was. In the center of the kitchen island, she placed one item, the pen, the one she had not used to sign. She didn't leave a note. She didn't need to. Grant came home at 3, walked through the apartment, noticed her coat was gone, noticed the photograph, noticed the pen on the island, centered with a precision that felt deliberate. He stood very still for a moment. Then he did something he rarely allowed himself to do. He panicked. He called Petra. Petra said, "She has nothing. She can't move without us knowing." Grant nodded at his own reflection in the kitchen window and tried to believe her. Then he started searching the apartment. He went through her desk, her nightstand, the shelf where she kept books. He found a copy of Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, with a page folded down somewhere in the middle. He found recipes printed from cooking websites. He found a half-finished grocery list. He found nothing that looked like a threat. What he did not find was her laptop. He opened the shared family computer in the study. Her profile. Documents folder. The folder was named Rainy Day. He clicked it. Empty. Everything had been moved. Recently. The folder contained one remaining file, a plain text document. He opened it. One line. "Hi." Grant stared at the screen for a long time. Outside, Manhattan went about its evening. Cabs, headlights, the city entirely indifferent. He closed the laptop. His attorney answered on the second ring. Grant said, "She's gone. I need to know our exposure." A pause. The specific pause of a lawyer calculating damage. "Did she sign the document?" "No." Longer pause. "Then we have a problem," the attorney said quietly. Joelle Park did not leave voicemails. If she called and you didn't answer, she moved on to the next action item. She was that kind of attorney. Forward momentum, no wasted energy. The legal equivalent of a precision instrument. She called Grant's attorney on a Tuesday morning at 9 sharp. He answered. "Mr. Harkins," she said. "My name is Joelle Park. I represent Serena Reeves. I want to keep this brief because I don't think either of us needs this to take longer than it should." A pause. "I'm listening." "I have the asset waiver your client attempted to have my client sign. I have the group text sent during that dinner. Legal exit plan, lovely name. And I have 18 months of financial transfers into shell structures your client built specifically to move marital assets beyond legal reach." She paused. "I also have a forensic accountant who has been very thorough and very fast." Silence. "Are you still there?" Joelle asked pleasantly. "I'll need to call you back." "Of course," she said. "I'll be here." She hung up and made a note in her legal pad. Then she opened a second document, one her paralegal had flagged the previous evening, and read it again carefully. This was the part she had not yet told Serena. Grant had filed for divorce 6 weeks ago. Quietly. Unilaterally. Under irreconcilable differences, which was his legal right. The filing itself was not the problem. The problem was the address he had listed for Serena. Not the Upper East Side apartment, a previous address, one she had not lived at in 4 years, which meant every court notification, every legal deadline, every document requiring her response had been going to the wrong place, by design. Joelle sat with that for a moment. Then she picked up her phone and called Serena. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and I need you to hear it without doing anything reactive." Serena said, "Tell me." "He already filed," Joelle said, 6 weeks ago, and he made sure you wouldn't find out." The envelope arrived on a Thursday morning. Petra noticed it between 2 client folders on her desk. A standard legal envelope, her full name printed on the front, with the specific formality that means someone paid a process server to deliver it personally. She opened it, read the first paragraph, read it again. It was a court summons. Her name listed as a respondent in a financial assets disclosure proceeding. The document cited several holding structures, shell companies, delayed transfers, accounts she had been listed on as a co-signatory. She had signed those documents 14 months ago. Grant had described them as internal firm restructuring. Standard. Her signature was just a formality. She hadn't asked questions because she had trusted him completely. She sat very still at her desk for a long moment. Then she opened her laptop and pulled up every document Grant had asked her to sign in the past 2 years. She read them this time. Slowly, fully, the way she should have read them the first time. Her coffee went cold. Her 9 o'clock call notification appeared, and she dismissed it without looking up. By 11, she understood what had happened. Grant had placed assets under her name without explaining what they were or where they came from. If the legal proceedings went forward, she would be required to account for funds she had never controlled and a financial trail she had never understood. She had not been his partner. She had been his paperwork. The anger arrived quietly. Not the hot, immediate kind. The cold kind. The kind that comes when you realize the story you have been living was written by someone else entirely, and you were cast without knowing your actual role. She thought about the file, the Pinnacle restructuring document. The metadata she had seen and screenshotted and told herself meant nothing. She opened her phone, found the screenshot. S. Reeves. She opened her laptop, pulled up the firm's server, found the original file, read every page this time. Then she opened a new email and typed 2 words in the address field. Joel Park. Grant had rehearsed it 12 times. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror the morning of the press briefing and delivered the statement with the controlled confidence of a man who had spent 20 years being the most composed person in difficult rooms. He had the cadence right, the pauses in the right places, the specific tone of someone who has been wronged, but is choosing dignity over drama. He arrived at the firm's conference room at 10, 12 financial journalists, a few industry bloggers, small enough to feel controlled, large enough to matter. He straightened his jacket, stepped to the front. I want to address some recent speculation directly, he began. The Pinnacle Group restructuring strategy of 4 years ago represented years of thinking that I developed through deep work with my team. I directed that project personally from inception to execution. A hand went up near the back. Grant nodded toward it. The journalist, a woman from a financial trade publication, notepad open, said, "Mr. Caldwell, Pinnacle Group released a statement this morning. Would you like to respond to it before continuing?" Grant kept his expression even. "I haven't seen it." She read it aloud. Pinnacle Group confirmed that the restructuring framework had been authored by Serena Reeves, verified through original file metadata, dated records, and a formal internal audit completed the previous week. The statement thanked Ms. Reeves for her foundational contribution to the company's recovery and announced her appointment as Chief Executive Officer, effective the following Friday at a gala announcement at the Plaza Hotel. The room was very quiet. 12 journalists looked at Grant. Grant looked at the table briefly, looked back up, opened his mouth. A second journalist said, "Will you be attending the gala, Mr. Caldwell?" The question sat in the air, like something that had already decided its own answer. Grant took exactly 4 seconds too long to respond. Every journalist in the room wrote something in their notepad during those 4 seconds. None of what they wrote was good for him. Elliot Vance had a rule he had carried for 40 years. Never act on instinct alone. Wait for the document. Wait for the proof. Instinct gets people fired. Documents get people justice. It was a good rule. It had served him well. It had also cost Serena 4 years. He sat across from her in the Pinnacle conference room on the 42nd floor and did not open with strategy or offer numbers or talk about transition timelines. He opened with something he had not said to anyone in a professional setting in a very long time. "I owe you an apology," he said. Serena looked at him steadily, said nothing. "I knew 4 years ago that the restructuring document was not his. The voice was different. The thinking was different. I asked him once, directly, and he deflected with enough skill that I let it go." Elliot paused. "I told myself I needed proof. What I actually needed was courage." The room was quiet. "I watched you leave the industry," he continued. "I assumed it was your choice. I didn't ask. I didn't follow up. A man I had doubts about continued building a career on work I suspected wasn't his, and I let that happen because I had no document." Serena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do you have one now?" "I have the full metadata audit. I have internal draft records. And I have something else." He set his phone on the table. Grant came to see me 2 weeks ago, asked me to consider him for the CEO position. When I didn't give him the answer he wanted, he said something before leaving. Elliot looked at her carefully. I had started recording the moment he walked in. Old habit. He pressed play. Grant's voice filled the quiet room. Calm, measured. The voice she had lived beside for 6 years. She won't be a problem much longer, one way or another. Serena sat with that for 3 full seconds. I'll take the job, she said. On one condition. That recording goes to the board before the gala. The studio in Gramercy was 11 floors up and faced a narrow courtyard. It was not a remarkable view, but Serena had grown to like it. The way the light came in sideways in the morning, the sounds of the building settling at night. It was a space that belonged entirely to her, and after 6 years of living inside someone else's idea of what her life should look like, that mattered more than square footage. The evening before the gala, she sat at the small table by the window with a Starbucks coffee she had been reheating twice and her laptop open in front of her. Joelle sat across from her, reading a legal brief and eating a turkey sandwich. The Dior suit hung on the back of the bathroom door. Navy. Clean lines. She had bought it with money from a consulting project she had taken 3 weeks earlier. The first professional work she had done under her own name in years. Small project. Honest work. Entirely hers. Joelle looked up from the brief. "You're not nervous," she said. Not a question. "I've been waiting for this for 4 years," Serena said. "Nervous isn't the right word." "What's the right word?" Serena thought about it. "Ready," she said. At 9:15, her phone buzzed. A text from Grant. "I know what you're doing. Don't do this to us." She read it, set the phone face down, picked it back up, started typing a reply. Something measured, something final. Then stopped. Selected all. Deleted it. There was nothing left to say to him that the next 18 hours wouldn't say better. She put the phone down. Joelle was watching her. "You okay?" Yes. What Serena did not mention, what she had not mentioned to anyone, was what she had seen 3 weeks earlier while scrolling back through old messages. A text Grant had sent to Petra, never meant for her eyes, forwarded accidentally into their thread by a glitch she was certain he did not know about. It read, "After Friday, she'll have nothing." She had screenshotted it the moment she saw it. She had sent it to Elliot the same night. Grant decided to attend the gala. Petra had advised against it. His attorney had advised against it. Even the quiet, reasonable part of his own brain, the part that had kept him out of trouble for 20 years, had advised against it. He went anyway. Because Grant Caldwell had never once in his professional life walked away from a room before the outcome was decided. And some part of him still believed, in the specific way that proud men believe things long past the point of evidence, that he could walk into the Plaza Hotel and control what happened there. He wore the Brioni suit. Petra wore black. They arrived together, which was itself a statement, though by now neither of them was entirely sure what the statement meant. The ballroom was full, 300 people, the kind of crowd where every conversation is also a calculation. Grant worked the room the way he always had. Firm handshake, direct eye contact, the easy fluency of a man completely at home. Nobody mentioned the press conference, which meant everyone had read about it. At 8:45, Elliot Vance stepped to the podium. Grant positioned himself near the center of the room. Good sight lines, visible. He set his jaw and waited. He heard the words 4 years ago. He heard, "She just did the work." He heard the pause before the name, that specific, extended pause. And in that half second, He made one final calculation and arrived at the wrong answer. Then he heard it. Serena Caldwell. The applause began. Grant did not move. Beside him, Petra turned slowly and looked at his face. Not with sympathy, not with shock, with the expression of a woman who has just confirmed something she already knew. She took one step back from him, then another. By the time Serena reached the podium, Petra was no longer standing beside Grant. She was standing alone, near the back of the room, glass in hand, watching the stage. Watching the woman Grant had built his story on top of. Finally, tell her own. The consequences did not arrive all at once. That was the thing about a reputation built carefully over years. It also dismantled carefully, quietly, layer by layer, the way paint peels off a wall that was never properly primed. The first layer came on a Monday. Grant's contact at Pinnacle, the same one who had warned him about the CEO announcement, sent a brief email. Professional, warm, regretful. The firm's advisory contract with Pinnacle would not be renewed this cycle. The board had decided to explore other options. No hard feelings. Best of luck going forward. Grant read it twice, filed it under things he would address later. The second layer came Wednesday. His firm's audit committee requested a meeting. Specific questions about the Pinnacle restructuring and the firm's use of that framework in client pitches over 4 years. The questions were not aggressive. They were careful and precise, the legal equivalent of someone measuring a crack in a wall before deciding whether to condemn the building. Grant answered everything calmly. His hands were steady. His corner office was reassigned 2 weeks later while he was traveling for a client meeting in Chicago. He returned to find his belongings stacked in neat boxes outside a smaller office down the hall. His assistant had already moved his calendar. Nobody made a scene about it. Nobody had to. The third layer was personal. His mother called on a Sunday morning. "I've been thinking," she said, "about how you treated that woman." "Mom, I'm not finished." A pause with 50 years of earned authority in it. "You had a wife who was brilliant and loyal, and you spent 6 years making sure nobody knew it. I raised you better than that. I thought I raised you better than that." She hung up before he could respond. Grant sat with his phone in the apartment that felt like a waiting room now. He thought about the pen still sitting in the kitchen drawer. He hadn't been able to move it. Elliot had suggested the River Cafe. Serena had said no. Not unkindly. Just directly. The way she had started saying most things since taking the job. She said, "I've eaten enough dinners in places designed to be seen in. I'd rather eat somewhere I'm actually hungry." Elliot had looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "I know a place in the West Village. No dress code. The pasta is unreasonable." She said, "That works." It was a Tuesday in late November, cold outside in the specific New York way that makes the city feel smaller and more honest. They took a cab downtown and sat at a corner table and ordered without looking at prices and talked for 3 hours about things that were not strategy or legal proceedings or Grant Caldwell. They talked about the company, what she wanted to build, what she wanted to change, the parts of the restructuring she had always believed were just the beginning of something larger. Elliot listened, the way he had always listened, fully, without performing attention. It was one of the things she had noticed about him from the first meeting. He was genuinely interested in what other people thought. Grant had always been interested in what people thought of him. The difference was not small. Walking out into the cold at 11 o'clock, Elliot stopped on the sidewalk and said, "Same time next week?" Serena considered it for exactly 1 second. "Wednesday," she said. He smiled. She turned toward the street to flag a cab. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. Unknown number. An email notification. Subject line, "You need to see this." She opened it. Sender. PV. Inside was a screenshot. A text thread between Grant and a new attorney. Not divorce proceedings. A formal IP claim against Pinnacle Group, alleging co-authorship of the restructuring framework. He was not finished. He had never known when to stop. Serena read it once, put her phone back in her pocket. She was already 3 steps ahead of him. She had been for months. Grant filed the IP claim on a Thursday morning. By Friday afternoon, Joelle had responded with a motion that cited the original file metadata, the internal Pinnacle audit, Petra's signed statement, and Elliot's recorded conversation. All in one document, clean and precise, the legal equivalent of setting 4 aces on a table and asking someone to beat it. The opposing attorney called Joelle the following Monday. The claim was withdrawn by Wednesday. Grant left Manhattan in January. Quietly. No announcement. Just a forwarding address in Connecticut and an apartment that cost significantly less than the one on the Upper East Side. The industry did not mourn his absence loudly. It simply rearranged itself around the space he had left, the way water moves around a stone that has been removed from a stream. Petra rebuilt under her own name, slowly, carefully, on a foundation she had laid herself. She sent Serena one last message 6 months later. Not an apology. Just 3 sentences. Serena read it on her lunch break and typed back 4 words. Thank you. Move forward. That was all either of them needed. Joelle celebrated the dismissed lawsuit by finally ordering the right coffee. She texted Serena a photo of the cup. The caption read, "No drama latte. Extra shot. We won." Serena laughed, a real one, the kind that surprises you. She was still smiling when Elliot knocked on the open door 20 minutes later. He was not there for a meeting. He had something small in his hand. A ring. Simple. Platinum. An emerald-cut stone chosen by a man who had been paying attention for a long time. He said, "I know the timing is..." She said, "Yes." He stopped. I didn't finish. "I know," she said. "Yes, anyway." Outside, Manhattan was bright and cold and entirely indifferent, the way it always is to everyone, equally. But inside that office, on the 38th floor, something had finally landed exactly where it belonged. She had not come back from anything. She had simply arrived, at last, at the life that had always been hers. And just like that, the story closes. So, are you still here with me right now? If you've made it all the way to this moment, I think something in Serena's journey quietly touched something real in you. Maybe it wasn't the boardroom. Maybe it wasn't the gala. Maybe it was that one small detail. A pen left on a counter. A leather notebook nobody ever asked about. That reminded you of your own quiet strength. The kind you've been carrying without anyone noticing. Here's what I keep coming back to. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Serena didn't win because she destroyed Grant. She won because she refused to let him define her. She documented instead of reacting. She moved forward instead of waiting to be chosen. She stopped asking for a seat at a table and simply built her own. The Stoics also said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Her invisibility became her greatest advantage. Her silence became her strategy. And I think that's the truth this story is really telling us. Smart people don't get loud when they're hurting. they get clear. If that hit something in you today, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it right now, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep walking through stories like this one together. Because honestly, you being here until the very end, that tells me everything I need to know about you. And your story? It's still being written. This story is a work of fiction created entirely for entertainment, emotional storytelling, and personal reflection. All characters, including Serena, Grant, Petra, Elliot, and Joelle, are completely imaginary. The companies, legal proceedings, financial structures, and corporate events portrayed in this video are dramatized and do not represent any renowned organization, business, or individual. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or deceased, or to real events is purely coincidental and unintentional. Locations such as Manhattan, the Plaza Hotel, and Park Avenue are used solely as realistic storytelling backdrops, not to imply any connection to real businesses or people associated with those places. The legal, financial, and corporate elements in this narrative have been simplified to serve the story and should not be interpreted as legal advice, financial guidance, or factual reporting of any kind. Our purpose is to share character-driven drama that explores themes of integrity, resilience, and self-worth. Thank you for watching with understanding and an open heart.
Đừng bao giờ coi thường phụ nữ. Đấy là một câu nói, một câu chuyện của chúng tôi muốn mang đến với các bạn. Mỗi một người phụ nữ tiềm ẩn sâu trong họ là một sức mạnh vô hình. Họ có những khả năng mà chúng ta không thể nào biết trước được. Khi mà người đàn ông mà họ hết lòng tin tưởng, hết lòng yêu thương lại dành cho họ một sự phản bội thì họ sẽ bùng nổ và chắc chắn là họ sẽ phản công để đòi lại những thứ mà họ đã đánh mất. Chính vì vậy hãy yêu thương người phụ nữ của chính mình. Và nếu mà các bạn yêu thích câu chuyện, hãy like, share và comment dưới phần bình luận để cho chúng tôi biết ý kiến của các bạn nhé.